Viewer discretion is advised. The following content may contain material that some viewers find disturbing or offensive. While we strive to create content that is informative and engaging, the topics discussed today touch upon sensitive subjects. We believe in open discussion and exploring complex themes, but we also understand that certain content can be challenging for some individuals. Your well-being is our priority. If at any point you feel uncomfortable, please feel free to click away. We encourage you to proceed with caution and take care of yourself. For those who choose to continue, thank you for joining us in this important conversation. We appreciate your viewership and encourage you to follow our channel for more thought-provoking content.
Praises Lucifer. O Lucifer, fallen star of pride, I offer my soul on this midnight tide. For islands of sin, for gold without end, for power of kings, my soul I send. Hail thee, morning star, in shadows I kneel, thy flame lights my path through the dark and the real. No chains of the meek, no mercy divine, I trade children's tears for thy kingdom of mine.
Praise Lucifer, architect of the fall. My mirror reflects thee, I answer the call. From temple to throne, thy will I obey. Eternal in darkness, forever thy praise.
Chanted low and slow, like a corrupted Gregorian dirge, pure fiction inspired by the swirling myths. No real evidence. Epstein high praise Lucifer, or sold his soul. Though conspiracy corners love linking his crimes to satanic
Dark journalist reveals the secret occult purpose of the CERN Hadron Collider 2. The new version is 5 times bigger, a dimensional communications weapons project for 2030. The elite are preparing for something far beyond our world.
This is fascinating because CERN, now, they did the Hadron Collider, the Large Hadron Collider, in Switzerland. And CERN is quite interesting because it's sort of a breakthrough between modern technology and ancient technology. But what it was set up for was set up by these scientists to find the God particle. It had a $21 billion budget, which is very strange in any scientific circle. So people started to wonder immediately, is there some military purpose behind it? And I dug into CERN and the Collider and found very odd things, including the fact that they had a huge scandal there for doing an occult ritual that got caught on camera in front of CERN. And the Hadron Collider becomes this thing that's sort of worshipped in these scientific circles because they're worshiping this incoming of a communication from another dimension. Technically, CERN is set up to find the God particle. Higgs boson is what they call it. But with that big budget, everyone assumed something else was going on. And so then they started to create papers about it and saying, no, all those rumors are false. There's nothing strange going on. We're just looking for the Higgs boson. But then they found it. So technically you'd think, okay, their work is moving on to something else. This thing about particle colliding is quite fascinating. Deep in the literature, if you look into it, these scientists say, we're trying to contact another dimension through CERN, through the Hadron Collider, in fact. So they've mapped out gigantic tunnels there in France, Switzerland, and other places. And they are using this as a gigantic particle smasher. Somehow in the middle of all that, they recreate the conditions, they say, of the Big Bang. And so then the whole concept of strangelets came up. And this is interesting. A group of scientists sued CERN because they said, your Higgs boson particle smashing experiments can release strangelets. And guess what? Strangelets can form black holes. And if you form a black hole, you can suck up a country, or, it's a big problem, basically, to create a black hole. So they sued them, and then they tried to find out who owned CERN and who was actually doing this. And they found out that CERN was a sovereign country, and that the way it was set up was very much like Vatican City, or something like this. There was no way to sue them. They are their own independent thing. So, digging in a little deeper on CERN gets us into occult territory, because there's a whole occult wing inside of CERN which thinks that they can use the technology to interact with beings, intelligences that are on a different dimension, literally. So that's very much like the Two-Eye Stone in that sense. And you can see that the CERN Hadron Collider is sort of Atlantean-style technology. It's also very innovative, kept very tight and underground, and has a funny, they had Tom Hanks start it up. He was like, hey, I'm going to start it up. It's CERN, Large Hadron Collider. I'm going to flip the switch. They have their PR thing, but it's a very strange project, highly funded. And now other countries are looking at CERN and trying to develop their own, saying, we think it's a weapon. It actually has a weapons use. So I think when we're talking about technology that is kind of a spiritual technology that could be misused, CERN is a good modern example.
Alex Jones was deplatformed in 2018 to remove him from Google's early 2019 launch of full AI machine learning from full video, audio, and text. His content had billions of views.
In the last few weeks, there's been a bunch of fantastic investigative reporting uncovering the reality that generative AI companies are pulling videos and transcripts from YouTube and using those creations owned by independent creators to train their AI models. 404 Media found that generative AI video unicorn Runway trained on thousands of videos without permission, including thousands of SciShow and Crash Course videos. A while back, the CTO of OpenAI, when asked if YouTube videos were in their training data, made this face, which isn't really what you want to see. And a Proof News investigation found that transcripts of 173,536 YouTube videos were provided to Apple, Salesforce, Nvidia, and Anthropic to train their models. Proof provided a little database that you could search, and indeed, SciShow, Crash Course, Eons, Vlogbrothers, all in the training data. If you have a YouTuber that you like, they're probably in there.
Well, Mr. Jones, you've got the best accuracy rate on wide spectrum analysis of anybody we've looked at. We've put your combined shows through AI and even trained AI on you, and you've got the best predictive abilities out there. And even before I got told that at a meeting about 5 years ago, it was, show you how dialed in he is, Mike Cernovich, because he goes to the meetings, and I'll just leave it at that. And I've been at meetings with Cernovich, but the point is that he calls me up and he says, you see these documents, these got leaked to me. The reason you've really been censored, one of the reasons is they wanted to take you out of the main AI models they're doing, because I was one of the most prolific people, tens of millions of views on YouTube, everywhere else. They're training it on YouTube, on their language model, and they basically say you've infested it, but they've got separate AI models where they're training it with you. So they have one version they give the public that doesn't really work, and then they've got other versions. And I'm not like trying to say, hey, look, I'm so smart, I'm used to train the establishment's AI. I'd be lying if I didn't tell you that. And then later some of that came out. So that's how, and of course there were headlines yesterday. Google is secretly using your emails and your YouTubes and everything you do on Google properties to train AI. It's you too now. But in the earlier models, they were only using a few dozen people, and I was one of them. In fact, I meant to show that yesterday. It was in yesterday's stack. I already cleaned that off. It's in there. Just type in, Google is using your YouTube videos and your emails. Google is using your personality to train AI models. And of course, that's no secret. Everybody knows that. But back then, was that 5 years ago? Was it longer? Man, time goes by. No, that's when I was really starting to get censored. Goodness gracious. It was already bad. 7, 8 years ago. Wow, I keep saying 5. And I love getting Cernovich on. He's super smart, but he doesn't really do interviews anymore. And he's just like, no, I don't want to. Your show's too big. I don't want to be on the radar. No.
The globalist elites are building doomsday bunkers in remote regions. They know catastrophic events are coming soon. Find out why before it's too late. Over the past 20 years, I have met with leading billionaires to wargame potential future scenarios for humanity that deviate away from the classic globalist post-human Great Reset model. Always. The number one topic discussed by different factions of the Western establishment is whether or not civilization can be saved and where to prepare to flee in the event of planetary collapse. In this powerful report, I reveal never-before-seen information about the secretive preparations being made by the power structure and what the public needs to prepare for in the near future. Stockpile food, water, and ammo. The fight is now.
You want to fight? You better believe you got one! The elites building bunkers and having escape ships because they think that's the safest place to be has been going on for a long time. I first learned about this in about 2005. Back then, I would still go on TV shows and appear in movies and do video game voiceovers since I was offered these jobs out in Hollywood. And then as soon as Obama got in, it was like, hey, you can't criticize Obama and have these jobs. And I was making pretty good money on that stuff and putting it back into InfoWars. So that was a great thing. And I said, no, I'm not going to compromise. So I got shut down and all those jobs stopped abruptly. But long story short, when I was out there, 2005, 6, I forget. And I was having lunch with a pretty big producer and some big Hollywood lawyers. I mean, these are well-known names if I said them. And they were all into politics in the world, and they thought 9/11 was an inside job, even though they were liberals. And they were against, Trump's, George W. Bush's war, and I was against that. So even though they knew I wasn't really a liberal, but more of a libertarian, they liked me. And they liked to pick my brain. And so after lunch, I go with this producer I'd known for years, and we're out walking around and got some coffee or whatever. And he's like, listen, I was going to do a deal with James Cameron. He was going to, with these big investors, put in hologram movie theaters where you sit in a circle around it, and the movies are holograms. We've had the technology a long time. But he's decided that there's going to be a nuclear war, a biological war, or some big destruction event from the elites he knows. And so he's basically getting out of the movie business, except, for this Avatar thing he's making. And that's why he really has these fleets of ships. And he writes it off of the, finding the Titanic and stuff like that. But really, he has all these big, giant ships because he's moved to New Zealand and got a bunker, but that's just his home base. He's got these ships, so he'll survive the end of the world. And I reported that like 7, 8 years before it hit the news. And, people heard me say that, and I love Mark Dice, but even he criticized me on it and said, oh, come on, Jones, that, you don't know that. But that was the first time I really, talked about this. And then I heard more from people and talked to people, and, occasionally there'd be some bigwigs in New York wanted to meet with me, or D.C. or L.A., and they'd fly me out there, and because I would want to tell them and warn them and tell them you should join Team Humanity. And they were like, no, we think increasingly there's going to be a big catalyzing catastrophic event. It could be an asteroid, it could be a pole shift, it could be a nuclear war, it could be a biological attack, it could be a cyber breakdown, a Carrington event. But we're told by the technocrats that this is coming. We got to get ready. And the government's built all these bunkers, and if we work with them in COG, we can have access to those. But we don't want to be in some government bunker. Where do you think the safest place to be is? And I'd be like, I'm not a strategic relocation expert, but I know a bunch of them, like Joel Skousen. And I made a documentary film off of his book about that, I guess about 12 years ago, 13 years ago, or whatever it was. So I'm a person that gets contacted and gets talked to about this stuff. And you'd think, the times I've been invited to speak to, billionaires and groups of people, and it's probably happened, 15 times in the last 20-something years. I mean, really big people. They're not trying to influence me. They're picking my brain and then having, sometimes 5-hour debates with each other or longer, and then breakaway groups wargaming all this stuff. And, how do we have a reset that's not destructive? How do we have a reset that's not a war? Because there's people that want that. And you see Elon externalizing this at the World Government Summit a few years ago, like, you guys know the old cycle's coming to an end. You always do a war. You can't do that. And then he laid out the reasons it'll get us all killed. And we got to have a new system, and we've got to, stop enslaving people and get pro-humanity and have more kids. And not because he's some angel. I'm not projecting that onto him. I don't know. But because he understands that their eugenics-based, post-human deindustrialization model won't work. He said, 5 years ago, don't get rid of fossil fuels either. We need those as well. So they want austerity. They want the Great Reset. That's a large part of the globalist. But there are a lot of people within their camp who say they don't. And I've had prominent ones to my face, quite a few of them tell me this, on the phone, you name it, or in person. And so I won't, sit there and miss an opportunity. I don't ever push it. I don't ever invite myself. I don't ever try to go to any of the meetings. If I wanted to go to the big think tank meetings and stuff, I've been invited to them by Henry Kissinger, all of it. But I knew that was to compromise me. Those are bad guys. So I didn't work with that group. And by work with them, I mean, talk to them. I don't converse. I don't engage. But I have some of the other groups, and they're not even like official groups, but it's more like think tanks, unofficial think tanks, or really debate clubs. I mean, that's what smart people do. And so there's been an intensifying consensus even before the Russia war started and this Iran thing that things are out of control, and that one group of globalists wanted to have a controlled demolition with the Great Reset using COVID as the lockdown. to bring us into a cashless society, universal basic income, social credit score, and that they should detonate the collapse themselves to pose as saviors and control it. But because that's been exposed by myself and others, it's wrong what they were doing, they figured out they've lost so much trust, they're not going to be able to pull a controlled collapse and then pose as the saviors and not get the blame for it. So now a lot of them have pulled back from that. A lot of them were never for it. A lot of them are still for it. And so that's the backstory on all of this. And that's the thinking going on. I told you this years and years before it hit mainstream news. I mean, this is now in the news. These discussions are going on. And so a lot of the globalists are like, there's too many people. Can't manage it. Knock the population down to 500 million, like the Georgia Guidestone said. Have total control. They call it the end of history. So there's no more cycles anymore. With the total technocracy, AI controlled. That's one angle. And there's competing systems within that, or no, have some technocracy, but still be egalitarian. So there's all these different camps and factions within the larger globalist faction that overlaps with the Chi-Com faction, that overlaps with the Zionist faction, and just it's a mess. And they all claim they want peace and want a world government or whatever in the past to stop destruction, but then they all double deal and sell weapons and screw each other and run scams. And so in their own words, that's why their global government, their system failed. When the Chi-Coms 18 years ago double-crossed them and pulled out, that was the beginning of the end, even in their own system. Now that the public's partially awake to them, there's no way they can put Humpty Dumpty back together again. So everybody talks about how they're building the bunkers and the doomsday systems and running off to, Tasmania and New Zealand and Argentina and all the rest of it, and up towards where the tree line ends and northern Canada and all the rest of it, and building their own little secret communities. But instead, we should talk about why are they doing that? People think about why are they doing it as an afterthought. Where does that tell you we are as a society and a civilization when a spectrum of the establishment elites are giving up on civilization and giving up on society? And then you get the effect of them grabbing more resources more recklessly and hoarding them and moving them around, which then exacerbates the collapse. And then you've got Trump, who, at least on the surface and even down deeper, I don't know what it's at his core, is trying to stabilize the West and is trying to relaunch innovation, and so is Elon Musk. And Elon particularly. So that's not just surface talk, that's bona fides. That's judge a tree by its fruits. And so I'm not in alignment with that. I don't even trust all of that because it's so complex. But and the alliances are always shifting. But I do support the natalist, pro-human, pro-family, pro-human future, optimistic, expansionist, laissez-faire system that the globalists are completely diametrically opposed to because it doesn't allow them to continue their monopoly of control that's created major stagnancy in innovation, but also exacerbated conflicts, stagnation with increased conflict. So here is a important interview with popular podcaster Julian Donnelly. Julian left stunned after billionaire bunkers conversation, naming names of one of the top futurist advisors who goes to these meetings. I've never been in a meeting with this guy, but I've read his writings and heard his stuff quoted, and I agree with a lot of what he says about where we're at. And here he is having a conversation about the establishment pretty much giving up on civilization. Well, you can't give up and just run to the Southern Hemisphere. I mean, I understand that it's if you think it's all going down, and if I had the money and resources and things and a big private jet where I could fly back and forth, I would probably be in Argentina or New Zealand or something. I mean, that's definitely, I understand moving back from the blast radius physically, but the breakdown of with the nuclear war in the Northern Hemisphere alone, and all the numbers, it'll be War of the Worlds, World War Z very quickly down there as well. And that's why these guys are building these up in the mountains with bunkers and basically financing the local town, the constabulary, and moving in people with plans to, blow the pass during a collapse so that the millions of starving people 100 miles away in the major city can't get in. But still, you'll be 3 months later, once society's collapsed, it'll reform into warlords. And then the warlords are going to come boiling up the hill in their armored vehicles and, with their refueled helicopters to attack you. I mean, that's where this goes. And they'll say, we know that, but it's better than just, getting vaporized when atomic and hydrogen bombs come raining down on our major cities. So here is a Julian Dory. Sorry, I said his name wrong. Left stunned after billionaire bunkers conversation. Here it is.
We talked with Doug Rushkoff yesterday. That podcast isn't going to be out for like 4 or 5 weeks or so because it's not time sensitive, and I've been filming a lot of great podcasts, and we got to get some other ones out. But Doug was a really interesting conversation. He's a guy I spoke about maybe like 8 weeks ago, where we played a clip of Doug in 2020 discussing his time advising billionaires, and this interview was before COVID. It was like February 2020, and he was discussing his time advising some billionaires a few years before that.
2018, he said.
2017 or 2018. Privately advising some powerful billionaires on how to plan for an end of the world or civilizational threat event. And it was something that they literally
call it the event.
The event.
Yeah.
So when he went to, you'll get all the details in our conversation, but when he went to talk to these guys, it wasn't like they were wondering or speculating that something could happen. They literally had a name for what would happen. They called it the event. They said it could be anything from nuclear disaster to artificial intelligence having a serious issue to a pandemic to something with the climate. They had all these different possibilities, but like, it's totally happening. So we're building bunkers. They had notes. They wanted to know exactly how to plan for the end of the world because Doug Rushkoff is like he's been a long time tech futurist philosopher, very well respected, got a lot of predictions right back in the 90s. So that's why he's being called into a meeting like this. And, he was blown away by like their lack of humanity. And the craziest part was I did it again, but I'm sitting there and I'm trying to, there's a lot of billionaires these days, but I'm trying to plug like who they could have been. And I can't, I'll never be able to say, it's off record, but I had this one guy in my head, and it's not Peter Thiel or Elon Musk or something like that. It's a more nondescript guy, but I had this guy in my head. I'm like, why do I think this was the guy leading the meeting? Like the dude calling it. And so I didn't have paper in front of me, but I was like, Dave, can you stick the camera on Doug real quick? He stuck the camera on Doug, and I had my band over there, my elastic band. I had the pen, so I wrote the name on the elastic band, and I held it up to Doug, who's like this like happy-go-lucky dude. He laughs the whole time he's talking, no matter how serious the subject is. And when I showed it to him, he went, can people see it? I'm like, no, people can't see it. He's like, yes, that was him. I was like, man, geez, damn. Sometimes, I'll put it this way, because I'll never say who that was, but sometimes people really, really, literally tell you who they are. And many of us don't listen. And you should listen when they do.
Yeah, Bill Gates.
Because some idiot YouTuber like me sitting in a studio in his house that he sleeps in as well should not be able to guess that on an elastic band on the first try. But I did. And it's just, it all ties, somehow all ties together, Dave.
Yeah. You see what the foundation of our great country is built on in this year of 250.
Surveillance and elite technocracy. That's exactly what they built it on. More on that in a few minutes.
Well, let me tell you guys, I've been at some of those meetings. And that's why I'm there. Because, well, Mr. Jones, you've got the best accuracy rate on wide spectrum analysis of anybody we've looked at. We've put your combined shows through AI and even trained AI on you. And you've got the best predictive abilities out there. And even before I got told that at a meeting about 5 years ago, it was, show you how dialed in he is, Mike Cernovich, because he goes to these meetings. And I'll just leave it at that. And I bet it's meetings with Cernovich. But the point is that he calls me up and he says, you see these documents, these got leaked to me. The reason you've really been censored, one of the reasons is they wanted to take you out of the main AI models they're doing, because I was one of the most prolific people, tens of billions of views on YouTube, everywhere else. They're training it on YouTube, on their language model, and they basically say you've infested it, but they've got separate AI models where they're training it with you. So they have one version they give the public that doesn't really work, and then they've got other versions. And I'm not like trying to say, hey, look, I'm so smart, I'm used to train the establishment's AI. I'd be lying if I didn't tell you that. And then later, some of that came out. So that's how, and of course, there were headlines yesterday. Google is secretly using your emails and your YouTubes and everything you do on Google properties to train AI. It's you too now. But in the earlier models, they were only using a few dozen people, and I was one of them. In fact, I meant to show that yesterday. It was in yesterday's stack. I already cleaned that off. It's in there. Just type in Google is using your YouTube videos and your emails. Google is using your personality to train AI models. And, of course, that's no secret. Everybody knows that. But back then, was that 5 years ago? Was it longer? Man, time goes by. No, that's when I was really starting to get censored. Goodness gracious. It was already bad. 7, 8 years ago. Wow, I keep saying 5. And I love getting Cernovich on. He's super smart, but he doesn't really do interviews anymore. And he's just like, no, I don't want to. Your show's too big. I don't want to be on the radar. No. And so there you go. But if anybody thinks I'm joking around about this stuff, I mean, Cernovich I've been at some of the same deals with him. And I mean, I'm talking about like 10 people. And like, we're the only guys that aren't famous billionaires. And again, it's not like, oh, we want to influence you. Oh, we want you to work for us. It's more like, well, this question, that question. What about this? And they're all arguing about stuff. And it's like, that's what goes on, folks. And so you'll hear these stories like, they're having orgies at Bilderberg and all this stuff. I've never been to Bilderberg. And it's like, no, they're not. They're scheming. But they're also wargaming. But then you got people that are at that breaking away and they're going, this isn't going well. What are we going to do? And you have the manifestation of that with Elon Musk, who's publicly telling you these people worship AI gods. They want to get rid of all of us. They're not good. And you say, well, he's involved in all the tech that's going to be used for that. Well, he's in a race to control it. He says for good. I'm not even saying trust him. I'm just saying he's one of the only ones doing that. And then I can tell you, it's been in the news, but I've confirmed it behind the scenes talking to a bunch of people that know him. Peter Thiel's basically given up on politics and is quasi-retiring to Argentina. That's how bad he thinks it is. But he's not the only one. Most of them are doing that. Larry Page, Sergey Brin, they're all staying on yachts, huge floating cities in the middle of nowhere in the South Pacific for a reason. Because of the spike protein and the 6G and the everything in the West. I mean, we've been slated for destruction. And so just that basic fact is something you should know. And that's the reality. I mean, look at this. This goes back to last year. Tech billionaires seem to be doom prepping. Should we all be worried? BBC. Billionaires are building luxury bunkers to escape doomsday. Vice.com. The super rich preppers planning to save themselves from the apocalypse. Why billionaires are building doomsday bunkers can't predict the next global catastrophe. And it goes on and on. You got the people that are worth hundreds of millions, not billions. They all get together and build their own communities in the middle of nowhere that look like nice houses on the surface, but there's underground bunkers under it. And then you've got all of the, the Nouveau Riche, the Hollywood folks all getting out of Hollywood. And, Mark Wahlberg's got this community. He's a great guy, by the way, off in Florida in the middle of nowhere. They can basically get there with a helicopter. And there's only like 45 families living there. And that's what people that aren't ultra rich, but, just very, very wealthy are doing. And then you've got Ivanka Trump going, oh, yeah, a couple of years ago with the Rothschilds, we got a $5 billion island, the former, nuke base of the Russians, and there's thousands of bunkers, and we took it over, and we're getting the coastline and building an airport, and Albania, and the Albanians get pissed off about it. Yeah, so here's some of the nice underground bunkers, folks. But what they really are is tombs. So the smarter people are building little communities, towns up in the middle of nowhere where everybody's, understands what's going on. The Swiss model, where obviously everybody's armed to the teeth and everybody's got firearms, but there is no perfect way out of this other than a relationship with God and saving civilization. As a true elite, a true aristocrat actually tries to empower the people for their own security and own future, but also knowing all this stuff blows back on you. So that's where we are.
Why did the FBI send 40 agents to search Lindsey Graham's home and question neighbors, asking, "Did you see anything?" In a shocking development, federal agents raided the South Carolina home of Senator Lindsey Graham, questioning neighbors and searching for evidence.
You think Victor Bout is just some loudmouth Russian arms dealer turned pundit? No. Bout said what we're all thinking, but too afraid to voice out loud. Zelensky isn't some plucky hero. He's a walking archive of dirty secrets. He's got the receipts on the biolabs, the siphoned billions in aid, the Hunter Biden deals, the oligarch kickbacks funneled through Cyprus and Delaware shell companies. He knows which Western politicians got rich off this forever war. He knows which intelligence agencies greenlit the provocations that lit the fuse. And he won't shut up. The deep state, call it the blob, the permanent government, the Western power elite, whatever, doesn't tolerate loose ends. Look at Epstein, a man who trafficked in blackmail material on the global elite. Islands full of compromat, flights logged with the most powerful names on Earth. Suicided in a Manhattan jail with cameras off and guards asleep. Convenient, wasn't it? One day he's the most connected pedophile alive. The next he's a corpse with broken hyoid bones and a narrative that we're all supposed to swallow without question. Zelensky is Epstein with a stage, a green screen, and a Western microphone. He's not just talking. He's threatening to pull the thread that unravels the whole grift. The endless aid pipeline that funnels taxpayer money back into defense contractor pockets. The censorship regime that branded any skepticism as Russian disinformation. The bioresearch facilities that even the mainstream now quietly admits were problematic. Bout nailed it. The political elite want him gone because he knows where the bodies are buried. Literal and financial. They can't just vote him out. Can't negotiate with him. Can't risk him cutting a deal with Trump or Putin that exposes the whole rotten architecture. So, the playbook activates. Character assassination first, then the quiet removal. A heart attack, a tragic accident, another Epstein. Plausible deniability wrapped in official statements and media shrugs. The deep state doesn't do messy assassinations in broad daylight anymore. They do natural causes in high-security environments. They do it because power isn't a conspiracy theory. It's a survival mechanism. Zelensky became too expensive, too unpredictable, too much of a liability. He stopped being their puppet and started acting like a man who might flip the table. And Victor Bout, he's next on the list for saying it out loud. The mouth that must be silenced, because once people start connecting the dots, from Kiev to Epstein Island to the donor class in Virginia, the whole illusion collapses. The elite don't fear truth. They fear the wrong person saying it at the wrong time.
Well, we have a lot to cover this hour. Then we open the phones up after that with special guests I'll announce later in the fourth hour on this live Tuesday, July 14th, 2026 transmission. Victor Bout didn't join us last week, so he's got a lot to catch up on the last 2 weeks. He joins us now, former political prisoner, international businessman, soldier, elected regional leader. And he predicted 6 months ago that Russia's patience would tire and that they would start warning to us they were going to hit NATO targets outside of Ukraine. And now you've seen some of the biggest bombardments yet, and Russia signaling that they no longer trust that the West has any intention of ever ending this. As Lavrov and Putin said, and how dare you lecture us, Putin said. And you have more of the refining capacity being damaged, which also hurts the West and exacerbates what's happening in the Strait of Hormuz, which is sending shockwaves to the energy markets and causing major inflation. And with the economy stalling and prices going up, that's called stagflation, the worst possible combination we haven't seen since the late 1970s. We have the mysterious death of Lindsey Graham. We can get Victor Boot's breakdown and take on that. We can tie it into all the latest developments in Iran as well, and so much more. But this is continuing to escalate. Victor, nice to have you here with us. Some stations don't join us till after this short break, but I'd like to just get a prelude of some of the, obviously we'll talk about the topics I just raised, but other places you'd like to go, please, sir.
Okay, greetings from Russia. Well, as you already mentioned, really the death of Lindsey Graham puzzled not only you, but everybody else, especially that the same night he was visiting that underground secret factory producing drones, there was a huge attack by missiles exactly on that factory underground. And as you said, nobody knows now for sure. We just, again, it's a theory, not a confirmed facts. But definitely, if you add, all these facts, very strange circumstances that Lindsey Graham, right on returning from Ukraine, apparently dead from some heart attack, unknown disease, who kills him, and just 10 hours ago he was still, alive, kicking and threatening Russia with the sanctions from hell. Well, another, this is one take. Definitely whether he was a collateral victim of attack or not. What I thought, honestly, when I see this news, I said, interesting. Let's us imagine, what if globalists really decide to send Trump a message and orchestrate such a scenario when one of his confidants, because the Lindsey Graham, as we know, was very important for the Trump team, or for Trump personally, not only partner on his golf courses, but also a man who fixed many, many problems in the Congress or Senate, as a matter of fact, for him. And that was definitely a huge loss for the Trump. How the Trump will, take it further. So if globalists decide really to send a kind of strong message and push Trump deeper and deeper in his side, then definitely death of Lindsey Graham would be one of this message. It's just my, humble opinion. So it's not a, I would say, any fact proven, just, train of thoughts. Well, at the same time, if we look back, what is a Ankara meeting? We're coming back to this NATO summit in Ankara. Very, very important thing which we understood, and this was publicly announced by our Minister of Foreign Affairs, Sergei Lavrov, that basically through the Embassy of United States delivered ultimatum to Russia. And this ultimatum have like 5 points, one of them to cease immediately all fighting across the front lines.
Victor, we got a break. Back in 60. Let's come back to where you were and recap and continue. Definitely things are escalating quickly. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Follow him on X at Real Victor Boot. All right, Lindsey Graham was only in Ukraine for a day. He got in trouble for using governmental flights and taking foreign money, so he reportedly did fly their commercial. It's a 12-hour trip out of Poland to where he went on a train. How he got out and got back to D.C., supposedly talked to Trump right before he died of a aortic rupture of the Widowmaker. People had a lot of questions. Then the FBI sent in a bunch of agents Sunday, Monday, today. They were questioning over and over again the neighbors. Iran put out celebratory promo videos, Lego cartoon, AI. They say Laura Loomer's next. They didn't say they killed him, but they definitely are playing into that. I haven't seen any evidence that they killed him. Would the globalists take him out to send a message to Trump? They obviously tried to say the Russians poisoned him. We don't have any evidence of that. I'm not saying he might not actually be a target. Russia said on May 25th that diplomats and politicians and U.S. personnel should all get out of Ukraine, particularly any government buildings or facilities in Kiev or other major cities. So Russia has said that they're getting ready to start striking, or looking at striking targets outside of Russia where weapons are being made and weapons are being massed to then be brought in and attack deep inside Russia, with intensifying attacks on civilian targets, oil infrastructure, energy infrastructure, and more, which economists have pointed out. Russia's now cutting back on exports of diesel and other energy, which will hurt the rest of the world as well, compounding what's happening with the Strait of Hormuz, which is closed. Trump says it's open. It is not. The U.S. has sunk 2 tankers in the last 24 hours. The Iranians blew up a large tanker, damaged a bunch of others. So the Battle of Hormuz is on. Trump has been advised by the Israelis. The Pentagon has publicly said it's a terrible idea to try to send in ground forces into a place that's like God designed it to be a trap for any invading army. The entire country is a fortress surrounded by mountains, but particularly the Strait of Hormuz. So Trump is in a stalemate with Iran, and every day this goes on, it's worse for the global economy. It's also bad for Iran, but they are dug in, and it was much worse for them during the Iran-Iraq war the U.S. financed and funded and directed. And so I don't expect them to fall anytime soon, if ever, as the Pentagon also told Trump 137 days ago, or really 140-plus days ago. They even leaked it to the New York Times that the chairman told Trump, don't do it. And we also have Russia launching more attacks overnight. I sent that footage to the crew. Smoking skylines, 3,000-ton bombs being dropped, as you see there, on Ukrainian positions. The Ukrainians admit that they basically have folded troop-wise and just used soldiers basically as cannon fodder to absorb Russian munitions, literally feeding them to the machine. And you also have the Ukrainians now saying they're going to rely purely on robots soon. That's being escalated. Lindsey Graham was touring one of those secret facilities literally less than a day before he reportedly died. Now, I want to play a clip from yesterday in a few minutes, but I want Victor Big to speak first, of Larry Johnson, who was the deputy head of counterterrorism at the State Department, before that the CIA. He is credited, if you just look up mainstream news articles, in the 80s and 90s and the early 2000s, training CENTCOM, training Army Special Operations in counterterrorism, and basically wrote the book and has sources in the Pentagon. He says his sources at the Pentagon, perhaps we should play this now, actually. He says his sources at the Pentagon said that the generals believed Sunday that he had died in Ukraine and that he was actually there. They said they didn't know if he died in the strikes or died of a heart attack, but reportedly they were told he was dead in the country from the Ukrainian sources. Why would Trump then cover that up? Well, he doesn't want an escalation, at least on the surface, with Russia. He at least is, on the surface, been against escalation. We don't know, but the FBI running around like chickens with their heads cut off the last 3 days, talking to the neighbors sometimes up to 6 times each, asking if they saw anybody or any, really shows they're trying to pin this on somebody or something's going on. But here's Larry Johnson, extremely credible, on Mario Nafal's program yesterday, saying this is what he heard from high-level Pentagon sources in the Situation Rooms.
Suffered a heart attack when he was hearing explosions in Kyiv. Is something he's probably never heard before.
But why would they lie about that? Why would they?
What do they lie about anything? I mean, show me. We just talked about how they're lying about the Strait of Hormuz being open.
Yeah, but that's
one more lie.
Yeah, but I'm saying usually there's a reason to lie. You want to lie to make it seem you're winning a war, to manipulate markets.
Yeah, so why? You want to admit that your the number one senator proponent of Ukraine died in Ukraine in the aftermath of the Russian military strikes? That doesn't fit the narrative too well. And all I can tell you is I've also heard from people who had access to the Pentagon, to generals in the command center, National Military Command Center. They were walking around talking today saying he died in Kyiv.
When did he? But when did he visit the drone factory? I'm curious. Can you tell me again?
Friday afternoon, but I don't know the time.
So if you visit Friday afternoon, so let me see. Because he might have visited. So when do you think he left Kyiv to Poland?
The earliest he could have left would have been the following morning, Saturday morning. But again, why would Graham fly 20 hours, fly and take a train for 20-plus hours to do just a tour of a drone factory, and then the next morning get back up and repeat that whole 20 21-hour journey.
And I looked it up. They're 8 hours ahead of D.C. there. So that puts it as later there. So that's more time he's got to catch up. I've talked to a lot of people. I don't think he could have gotten back. But at this point, it's still speculation. So Victor, let's start over. Some stations weren't carrying the earlier segment. Let's talk about this. Let's look at Russia's posture, obviously getting more aggressive as NATO's gotten more aggressive, now starting to move up to match that on the escalation ladder, and then where that trajectory goes. And then let's look at Trump's delusional statements. And boy, I sure wish our president wasn't like this, saying the strait's open, the oil's at record levels, and everything's fine, and we've won, and we're going to get 20% toll. And then that was 24 hours ago. Now he says, oh, now we're not going to take the toll because he can't enforce it. I mean, this is just total bleed out of U.S. credibility. And if you study the way our leaders behave in the past, they'll tend to double down when looking foolish. This is a crisis reaching critical mass. So Victor Boot, real Victor Boot on X. Victor, your take on Graham and then leading into all this.
Well, let's go for the timeline. As I mentioned you just before this commercial break. So basically, our Minister of Foreign Affairs, on the press conference while he was in Africa on the 9th of July, said that America delivered ultimatum through the embassy of United States in Moscow. Think of this. We're talking, it's happened at least a couple of days before that. So we're talking about between 7 and 8. This ultimatum was, delivered. And since Minister of Foreign Affairs was in charge to announce it publicly, which means its rejection of this ultimatum, then we see Lindsey Graham on 10th on Kiev. And apparently on the 11th, he is dead. Now, seeing that, what's happening, that Russia really never stopped the massive attacks on the critical military and logistic infrastructure. A part of those hits in the Kiev of the weekend, on the 10th, 11, 12, 13, and today 14, there is still Russia do it at its own will because Ukraine capital do not have any Patriot PAC-3 interceptors, so all ballistic missiles are literally going unchallenged. So the same true for the infrastructure in the Odessa seaport, where just this morning, the Russian Ministry of Defense announced they hit the fuel storage in the port facility near to the main port in Odessa, and also the one tanker and one cargo ship he was about to dock. So this is really a sign that Russia really now passed from warning and trying to expect any feedback or open any channel, at least functional. Since the ultimatum was delivered, an answer was said no. We're seeing this two track going parallel to each other. Trump again restarted attacking Iran, and Iran shut down the Hormuz Strait. Ukraine before was trying to sell its advertised new 40 days huge massive deep strikes in Russia, which is, as you mentioned, definitely will bring a problem with the fuel supply to the world market, because Russia already announced, our Ministry of Energy and the Vice Prime Minister says that they are now put in function the ban for export of diesel and the gas. So, and Russia was one of the biggest diesel supplier to the Western markets. So this definitely will push up the prices. So here we are on this escalation ladder, where now we don't expect anything happening on this mediator team, because none of them exist, despite the attempts of the president of Turkey, Erdogan, to say, well, we will welcome any negotiations. And then we're seeing that, look, how you negotiate or why you need to send Kushner or Witkoff to Moscow, because basically, if American embassy already delivered ultimatum. So this ultimatum basically was giving Russia time frame till the end of the month to stop the military action on the front line, exchange all prisoners, all for all. Then they exchange all data of the dead bodies, DNA for the analysis, and then, start negotiations without precondition. which is a non-starter from the Russia, because precondition was exactly the reason why the Russian government started, this operation in February 2022. And now we see that, of course, Russia went also to all the measures to stop, which you are showing now, that this was a bust in several cities, when actually the British secret services, through the Ukrainian intelligence, trying to attack strategic also facilities in Russia using these drones, which they smuggle from Ukraine through the Europe, through Poland, Belarus to Russia, assemble them.
And just interrupt for radio listeners and TV viewers. We're showing a Russian report that they intercepted hundreds of drones being smuggled in and captured the Ukrainian intelligence operatives that did it. That they were planning major attacks, not just on Russian military bases, but on their families' apartment buildings. And they now are showing the evidence.
So our counterintelligence are working very hard, basically 24/7 non-stop. And this is not only the first case. Every day there is a bust of this organization. They finally figure out how to detect those problematic zones. And at least we see this would be another, attempt like they did on our strategic forces. But now, finally, our forces and our law enforcement also learn a lot.
So you're saying that they've been stopping new Operation Spiderwebs?
Correct. That's exactly was a part of that. But this time, if the spyware was just, kind of the quickly, organized and orchestrated, despite it took a long time preparation, here we see all these critical parts delivered from Canada, from England, assembled there. So it's basically, a real reason for the war with the West, because look, you're trying to attack with the weapons you smuggle in. And then you are complaining that if we go and start striking you, it's like we don't have a reason. And basically, look, since this ultimatum was delivered, it's clear, at least all masks went off. We are here in very critical period. And I guess very soon you will see that Russia will go for the unexpected moves. And despite Ukraine now, as we discussed with you before, will plan also to surprise Russia by surprise attack, whether on Belarus, whether for another Russian region, or maybe for Crimea when they want to, just break up subline, reach some coast, or put a kind of the Marines to, finally go on the beaches of Crimea, put a flag and do some pictures. Definitely only for their political purposes, has no any military sense. What happened?
So you predicted months ago they would pull stunts in Crimea. They've since done that, but it's admitted that Russia is making the largest gains so far from the east into the west. So I know the Russians probably haven't even, leadership hasn't decided the exact moves, but just as a private citizen and military expert, looking at the trajectory, what does your gut tell you the timeline is for Russia to start striking targets, say, in Poland?
Well, I don't think the Russia on present situation will strike Poland the first, because now the Poland has its own problem with Ukrainian. Finally, they woke up and realized, this is exactly the same Nazi who was exterminating and do ethnical cleansing during World War II, killing hundreds and hundreds.
And you might fill them in on that controversy. Obviously, the Poles knew that. Russia in the last month said we're getting ready to invade part and hit you. Looks like Poland used what they already knew as a way in detente to push back into Russia and say, look, we'll start de-escalating. Or am I hoping too much there?
Well, look, we're still thinking that among all the crazy European leaders and the governments, at least the Polish government, somewhat reasonable, at least maybe not on their foreign minister, but at least president sounds realistic. Yes, he still is anti-Russian, but we don't care if he is anti-Russian. He will mind own, Polish interests. Sooner or later, he will realize that Russia is a strategic neighbor just there. And
because for people that don't know, it's not just a military threat. You've talked about this a year ago, but Ukraine is running all sorts of scams, frauds, drugs, money laundering, murder, and farming scams, right?
Correct. And now they're going to get the same challenges which Ukraine was trying to do against the Russian population and Russian economy, which would bring them a huge problem into the Poland, into our countries, and let them deal with this. But I believe that the first strikes of Russia on the West would be somewhere between the, Germany, England, and the France, just to show all those, coalition of the willing, and those three very merry and gay partners. We're talking about Macron, Merz, and whoever now come a new leader of the Britain. I keep struggling to memorizing names of the new prime minister, which is in Britain. It's a funny thing. So I guess couple strikes within the facilities who producing armaments for Ukraine, which is in fact British or German armaments. They're just putting the labels made in Ukraine. So you are in direct conflict with us. We have the all international rights to destroy those targets. And then we will see whether America will still have a guts to, answer for if they will try to invoke Article 5 of the NATO Charter.
Now, well, this is really important, so you're an expert. Let's flesh this out. Russia, on the escalation ladder, and I've studied this, said to Poland last few months, you're the main staging area. We're looking to hit that if you don't start making some noises and backing off a little bit and saying we're not going to be the main conduit. You want to be the first target. Poland starts making moves saying no. And then now Russia, I've seen in the news, state media saying, okay, well, look at British bases, French bases, other things. Will they hit depots in third-party or other closer NATO countries? Or do you think they would be as bold, the Russians, to hit actually inside the UK, inside France, inside Germany?
Correct. I think the Russia will have no choice but to hit inside UK, Germany, and France, like a very limited, strikes, not nuclear at all, just to damage those Ukrainian facilities, so claimed. So there would be no arguments that we are attacking their military. You are openly declared, the Germans, French, and Brits, that these are Ukrainians' factory. Okay, if it's Ukrainians, we have a full right to hit them. And now you explain to your public. Then eventually what can follow up, that since we're seeing how the Russia started actively destroy and attacking the all ships going to Ukrainian ports, that definitely would be another blockade, because Ukrainians tried to play the game and start hitting, other ships, including Turkish ones, without even checking who is who. So this definitely will cause a problem with the Black Sea navigation. But look, it's not Russia who started it. We've been asking and negotiating and telling and explaining to Turkish counterparts, to European counterparts, hey, keep this aside. You remember there was a grain deal, which was again used just to smuggle more weapons to Ukraine. Now it's all over. So what Ukraine will do if they attack Belarus, Russian territory, Crimea, or maybe try to recapture Zaporozhye nuclear power plant, well, then definitely would be a very, very massive, counter-attacks and counter.
So what Russia is saying is more spiderweb attacks, more attacks on the nuclear power plant, more big attacks on Moscow. The red line is there. We're going to start hitting targets. And I was looking at it, I was going to say, if I was the Russians, it's less of an escalation than actually hitting inside the UK or France or Germany, which I know Russia said they'll do. Would be sinking NATO cargo ships, bringing in the weapons. I would expect that to be Russia's next move.
Well, I guess if there would be another big attack on our refineries, I would be not surprised to seeing that refineries in Germany or Britain would be also attacked. Or Russia also can attack Rotterdam, huge and very important hub for energy in Europe, and to say, okay, for every attack of our refineries, 5 of your refineries would be also attacked. Let's go, let's play, and see who can endure more, who can last more. So if they want this game, they can have it.
Yes,
and this is an issue.
And then let's speak to this. I know they've got some unnamed missiles and other named missiles, these special ballistic missiles that have gone right through the defenses. I notice Russia has done demonstrations of these hitting government buildings and weapons depots without even having warheads in them. And you see the facilities with perfect holes right in the top, illustrating that. I would imagine that will probably be the types of weapons that would be used on European targets.
Well, eventually, look, I can't really predict which one they're going to choose, but they definitely will make sure that this would be limited more kind of the demonstrator attacks to show the public of the states, hey, you want the war inside Russia? Guess what? Now the war coming to your place. And that's will definitely change the public perception. Okay, are you ready for the war? If not, why are you then pushing the war, or why you trying to push your population to the war if you're not ready? Correct? If you want to fight and you're not ready, don't start the trash talking to Russia. That's the period. And this is an issue now. Look, basically, we finally exhausted all the means of diplomacy. Nothing works. We've been duped, fooled, and played over and over again. Finally, I would say the enormous patience of our government is very close to finish. And I will tell you that the public opinion patience is finished at least, last year.
So and you predicted that 2 weeks ago, that soon we'd hear announcements from the Russian leadership. Lavrov and Putin both said what you just said last Friday. We'll be right back with Victor Boot as we turn towards the Middle East and the Strait of Hormuz being closed.
We have to fight for our sovereignty. We have to fight to protect, again, what God gave us, which, our health is one of the biggest things. We're all, at this point, middle-aged. We're trying to have families. And I think with the transhumanist agenda, there's a little bit of a psyop afoot. Where,
I've said that. But the other day when I had you guys coming on, I said, we're doing something about what we can take control of. And then the last few years, Joe Rogan, one time at dinner, goes, about 3 years ago, you're fat, you're your own enemy. He does that to guests. He was like Theo Vaughn, too. Get off that Prozac, you idiot. And people were mad at him. That's tough love Joe does. And he's there with Sean Johnson, the Navy SEAL guy that I'd known for years, but wasn't really friends. Sean goes, fine, I'll train you. I'll beat you every morning. And I said, all right, let's do it. And then I lost like 70 pounds, and I kind of halfway cut back and gained back 10, but now I'm back to where I was. I'm going to go even lower. But the whole point is that Joe goes, you're your own worst enemy. You think the global's going to kill you. You're killing yourself. And so that's where Masterpiece comes in. That's where doing all this comes in. I mean, this is real, folks. Methylene blue works. Bovine colostrum works. This, get Masterpiece.com. The Masterpiece is unbelievable.
We are at a crossroads with the survival of the human species. And the people that have all the resources and all have spelled that out very clearly to us. And the things that they are putting inside of our body to complete that mission, you got to get out. The fact of the matter is, zeolite, which is one of the main ingredients of Masterpiece, has been proven in all ways to remove every toxin that it's looked at grabbing. It performs, that's why it's called the master binder.
But yours is different.
It's completely different.
Because it doesn't just pull stuff, it brings in the key sea minerals.
Yes, absolutely. So any way that you would actually test Masterpiece out, which would be like its pH, its molecular composition, its molecular ratio, if it's isotonic and whatnot, it is identical to blood plasma. You're talking about marine plasma, sea plasma, minerals. It is the same molecular composition as your blood profile. And so why does that matter? Blood is life. When you are grabbing the problem with our bodies, with the toxins in there, which is disrupting how our bodies perform on every level, it's literally made our bodies mineral deficient. Toxins take the place of minerals. So when the Masterpiece is carrying in minerals, when it takes a toxin, it's giving the perfect minerals right there at that time. That's why everyone that looks at the testing, whether it's our hair tissue mineral analysis practitioners, our blood testers, which we've done 3 different independent third-party labs doing different blood testing, they've never seen results like this.
Yeah, so regular zeolite just pulls out bad stuff. It doesn't replace it. This is zeolite with a good thing. Pulls out bad. It goes bloop. Good.
Yeah. Our bodies are magical if you get the poisons out.
Reality starts here. AlexJonesLive.com. Share the link. Spread the word.
There's a real normalcy bias going on here. We have millions of people dead in the conflicts that NATO and the globalists have openly started. And these very same globalist interests are literally trying to demoralize and bankrupt and break down our societies. They believe they're insulated from all the crises they've created, but I have all these mainstream news articles that I can confirm from inside sources are accurate. After Victor Boot leaves, I'll get to these, with the billionaires literally fleeing to New Zealand and Argentina and everywhere else, building giant bunkers, and Zuckerberg building billion-dollar bunkers and having huge yachts and support ships that are actually to flee during collapse to the ocean. You've got top advisors to the billionaires going public saying they're gone into fever mode over all this. I have, off record, met with some of the billionaire folks over the years, and they're not ever there trying to get me to do something. The meetings I've agreed to have, they are asking me what I think about the future, because my views on the future are respected, and they just want to talk about, can society be saved? You see Elon Musk publicly talking about that with me in interviews and elsewhere. He legitimately is very concerned about the trajectory of things as well, but he still goes along with the military-industrial complex because they would shut him down in a second if he didn't. But there are a lot of people in the system don't like where this is going, but the general public, 80+% are against these wars, so they've got the right idea, but they still think Russia is like Mars or Pluto. They think Iran is, a whole other galaxy, billions of light years away. It's not. And the Russian submarines filled with all those missiles, nuclear hydrogen bombs, are just off our coast. Ours are off their coast. And then you see Trump's amateur understanding of the military, which he admits he doesn't really understand it. 6 months ago, going, oh, Russia, you better watch it. I just put a nuclear submarine off your coast. And Russia had fired back and said, yeah, we're tracking 35 of them right now. What does that mean? I mean, it's just, oh, I got a nuclear sub off your coast. Uh-huh. And there's a bluebird out in the tree over there. I mean, it's all very childish. I quit counting it over 50 times. Trump said the war's over, regime's changed, Strait is open. He said it's open again today. I showed his Truth Social. Oil's flowing better than ever. That's not true. You've got a bunch of blown up ships and multiple sunken ships by both sides. So if Iran lets ships through, the U.S. sinks them. If the U.S. tells ships come on through, they sink them. We can show you footage of that. The Iranians saying anybody doesn't get authorization will sink you. So this is a total disaster. But I want to put bookends on Russia and obviously get rid of Starmer. That's happened. But you've got the rest of this club in Germany and France and everywhere wanting war. And we're sleepwalking into doom here. And, even myself, that's very aware of how we're the closest to midnight on the doomsday clock by the groups that track that we've ever been, still it is otherworldly. And it seems like a dream or a nightmare. And that's what happens in history. And then you wake up in total destruction. World War II killed hundreds of millions of people. This, if it continues to boil, will kill billions. And it is believed by our own establishment that this is a probability, not a possibility. And so I can tell you, not just Peter Thiel, but a bunch of these people have evacuated the United States. A lot of the European elites have moved their families out of Europe. That is not a good sign. A lot of the big billionaires are spending most of their time now on their 400-foot yachts that are the size of cruise liners. And I told you this years ago that James Cameron, the first guy I learned about like 20 years ago, thought this would happen then. And that's why he writes it off looking for sunken ships, the Titanic, but really he has a whole fleet of ships because he doesn't even think New Zealand's safe. He's got bunkers there. So that's a long introduction, Victor. It's just that we have all the preparations here for a Dr. Strange-Levian doomsday event, and I just don't see why the Western elites, even though they know they're in grave danger, it's like there's some invisible force driving them. I guess that's Satan doing this. Can you speak to the madness and other ideas to de-escalate this, and then we'll turn the time we have to the disaster in the Middle East?
Well, you're absolutely right. You've been talking for many years, if not decades, about runaway civilization and all these elites who actually start building these bunkers in New Zealand or in Chile and Argentina for a very long time ago, and they try to evacuate. Well, as you correctly also mentioned, what is the reason? What is the logic behind why these elites want to destruction of their wealth? Well, if logically that you are independent actors, then yes, it's applied to you. Why you want your kids or your country to be destroyed? But if you are someone who's been grown up, groomed, and, put on the position by either Soros organization or through the Epstein, system, you're definitely there on hook for this global cabal, those who are behind the scenes, all masters who orchestrated and actually, manipulating all these leaders like a puppet masters. playing and telling them what to do, and they have no choice to comply. Look on these European leaders. Look on this Zelensky. Well, we are really in a very bad horror movie when these clowns basically playing, and openly they're not even trying to hide that they're clowns. And this is, as you said, went out of any acceptable limits. And I guess this one of the plan of the globalists, to really shatter your capacity to even understand or wrap your mind around what's going on by putting this kind of the creep show every day before our eyes. So sooner or later we will be all saying, why on earth they're doing this? But this is exactly their purpose. This is exactly how they want us to completely be confused and disorientated. Because look, major part of the efforts in this especially conflict with Ukraine, we're seeing exactly also very important role, which is information wars playing even in the Iran conflict. It's basically now I would say, center of gravity went from battlefield to the perception. Who is winning, who is losing, and matters or facts on the ground are not matters anymore, because you will consider what you see on the screen, what they're going to feed you. And this is how those who are responsible to feed us, keeping this diet, properly, orchestrated or properly, mixture.
Crisis creation, hysteria, flip-flopping daily. This is truly what George Orwell wrote about in 1984.
Correct. Because, look, if you are confused, and this is their idea, look, if you will study and analyze how you're going to control the mass perception, how your advertisement work for the past 40, 50 years, how they sell us the consumer goods, how they sell us their unsuccessful policies. It's always about creating you so-called mosaic perception of the news. They will put you some unrelated facts and they put some horror news inside, and then you're confused because your human nature will revolt to saying, how come you're showing me, blood scenes where somebody killed someone on the streets, at the same time you're bringing up advertisement of the Pepsi Cola or pizza. So this create on our subconscious level a very confused response. And this is where we are most vulnerable. We don't know how to act. We don't know what to make out of it. We just think, oh, maybe this is just, night bad dream, and we wake up into the normal reality.
It creates catatonic uncertainty. Do you think Trump, with his accelerated flip-flopping, is on purpose trying to create uncertainty? Because he says, oh, the economy's great, we're wonderful, everything's good, but changes his story on a daily or even multi-time daily. He didn't really do that before, or do you think that's because he knows he's in a dead-end trap, doesn't have an off-ramp, he thinks? Well, because, by that rule, we know the globalists do that to demoralize us, but what do you think Trump's doing? Do you think he knows he's demoralizing the whole world?
I think, there is, two scenarios. First of all, as you said, eventually Trump knows there is no any good, way out from this situation, because he already led himself into this trap of globalists. Or he is controlled by them, or they have something on it, and the public disclosure will cause him a huge damage, political or otherwise. So for him, what he's flip-flopping, it's like, he is trying to please the both sides. He's trying also to give something to the globalists, at the same time give something to his base, and then still talk about peace, at the same time attacking Iran. This exactly, if we see all these information wars, tactics is a confusion. So I guess he is not just doing it intuitively. This is an entire plan to always keep everybody on their toes without knowing what is the next move of Trump will be, because you can't really listen what he's saying, because several minutes later it would be say, no, I never said this, and we just need to watch what he's doing. But definitely one thing is clear, that at least what he was bragging about or trying to sell himself, like he's going to stop the Ukrainian-Russia conflict started by the Biden very quick or whatever, he said he went to Anchorage meeting and, agreed basically with the Russians how they're going to sort it out, is not materializing. And if Trump cannot keep his word, why on earth we will, even speak to him? So if he is really, and I guess he knows perfectly the real situation of economy, real situation of the global economy, what's happening within the United States with their even oil reserve, that they've been burning them so quick that the underground strategic oil reserves start collapsing because they've been so empty, so they can't anymore be useful. And that, eventually we discussed with you, there is only two scenarios. That's the first one we said. The second one, he said, okay, never mind the midterm election. We're going to declare the war, the emergency law. And then, what heck of election?
Civil emergency, martial law. And Trump's now.
Martial law, correct. Martial law. And then there is no anymore democratic election. Then everybody uses Zelensky and their I would say, blueprint how to control power without having any, rights for it. And you're going to do following. You're going to declare martial law. You're going to you declare, war to many countries and keep fighting all these countries. And then you basically can shut down all your opposition. If there is no election, you cannot be held responsible.
And Victor, we talked months ago, if he's getting ready to do that, and there's been noises coming out of the White House of that, he would then come out and say, it's true, 2020 was manipulated by a foreign government. He hasn't said yet, but now he's going to address the nation, a rare event, an actual address about the 2020 election and a foreign government. I've tried to find out. No one is talking. No one is saying they know. Some are saying it looks like it might be China through the voting machines out of Taiwan and Venezuela, probably Venezuela. But this, and undoubtedly some of that went on, but this is what he would do ahead of an election, if not the midterms, the next one coming up. And he told Zelensky he's interested in doing that because Zelensky's canceled elections for a long time. And so you spoke about this over a year ago, actually, and now we're seeing some signs that they're laying the groundwork of this. And then we saw Trump all footsie, suddenly very buddy-buddy with Zelensky at NATO, cozying up with him. As soon as Lavrov and Putin saw that, they said, okay, yeah, we know you're not serious. And so even the optics of that, that's a lot to unpack. What do you say?
Yeah, and not only this, because look, Zelensky, it's like when you went to the cult or some, using the drugs, become too addictive. Think of this. If Zelensky is sitting and basically having a lavish lifestyle when all his Ukrainian, patsy in Europe, buying left and right the most expensive villas, most expensive cars, jewelry, and all this, plus, okay, you come to Kyiv.
Let's be clear. He's bought billion-dollar ski resorts in the U.S.
Correct. Now, think of this. So what do you think about a leader of the European country like Macron or like, anybody else thinking, oh, hell, I cannot afford to go and just get what I want, buy drugs or have a hooker. I better go to Kyiv and get anything I want, okay, including, completely crazy stuff. So for them, Zelensky now is a role model because how you're going to get to power and always keep it. First of all, when you're there, you make sure that the media you control fully. Then you go after your opposition, eliminate them one by one, jail them, kill them, poison them, do whatever you want, send them in exile. Put your opposition also, send them in exile if a foreign power will object, like he did with his General Zaluzhny, who is the so-called ambassador in Britain with his presidential ambition. And then all his clique is just, trying to extend this war to a little bit, make some more money, some more couple billion money, which is coming from where? From sky? No, it's sent by the taxpayers. And if Britain and Germany is saying we have to cut our, healthcare programs, we have to shut down our social.
They can't even produce energy to make Mercedes. So in the time we have left, since you did predict all of this,
and send all the money. Think of this: why the European leaders are so eager to send this money to Ukraine? Because
they're laundering it back.
They're going to get a cash back. They're going to get kickback. I don't know whether it's 10%, 20%, 30%, or half.
Zelensky said a year ago that 50% goes back in a speech.
Okay, 50%. So think of this. It's a fantastic business. Where on the world you as a leader will get this kind of the uncontrolled, untaxed returns? man, then you buy anything you want on the third country, and just when you're done your term as a president...
It shows what a thug he is. It shows what a thug he is. They were criticizing him in Europe and the U.S. for keeping a bunch of the money, and he said, hey, you better watch it. The exact quote was, 53% goes back to you, and they all shut up. They all shut up. So let me raise this in closing. You pointed out a few weeks ago that they bombed and tried to kill the guy that ran the criminal call centers that they admit are running all these scams, not just against Russia, but Poland, Americans, the whole world are doing it. Just every criminal enterprise you can imagine. It's the Wild Wild West in Ukraine right now. And so that's why all these globalists are going there for not just the sex and pedophilia and organs, but just money laundering, anything goes. But they tried to blame Russia for that, like Nord Stream, but even Interpol came out and said, no, it's Zelensky's intelligence agencies are killing a bunch of loose ends because Zelensky thinks he may fall because all this corruption's coming out. And you saw lots of reports and videos of the conscription troops getting beaten up in major cities like Kiev and others by mobs of men and women, showing that, like Ceausescu's fall, that it's getting close. Then you have Zelensky's latest government reshuffle was triggered by new incoming corruption scandal. Ukrainian ambassador to the U.S. Will reportedly be charged. And then you have the prime minister resigning. So these are big moves you predicted. Very good signs overall that the Kiev regime could fall of its own weight, and because the Russians have overwhelmed the human element. That's a lot to unpack. We're almost out of time. Victor Boot.
Yeah, correct. You're absolutely right. Look, you can... inject as much as you want into information side of it. You can run all your scheme. You can pay huge money to all the journalists who are gonna publish what you want, very orchestrated CNN reportage, how this, long strand Ukrainian drone taking off.
But Fantasyland only lasts so long.
Correct. And that's where exactly we're coming to this hard landing or, awakening moment when you've been using the drugs. Finally, you fell asleep. And the moment you wake up and realize, oh, damn, what I was doing all that time, how much time was passed. So all these now exactly on this kind of the drugs overdose mode. And sooner or later, would be, moment where they have to face the reality. And reality would be so ugly, nobody would like this. But remember, Zelensky is a continuation of the Epstein scheme running now on the global level. And if Epstein scheme in the US was running, kind of the very low profile, under the radar, Zelensky, make it on steroids. It's really monetize it bring the global scale. It's involved not only politician from United States. He actually involved eventually many also from the global elites. That's why he is now can call them and to say, hey, if you don't do what I want, I just expose how much money I gave you, with which underage girl or boys you went and what you did, because I holding all these recordings. And this is why he is exactly acting like Epstein, trying to manipulate them, trying to be a boss, of when he comes having all these royal welcomes.
Well, that was my next point in closing, Victor. I think you said this 2 years ago when you first came on, if I look at this towards the end, whenever that comes, and it looks like it's close, it's going to be NATO and the West that's going to kill Zelensky.
Correct, because he knowing too much. And now, actually, we don't even need to go and hunt him. Believe me, first of all, British and then eventually Americans want him dead, because if he will start talking, and exposing, that would be not only political problem, it would be political catastrophe, where the entire political class would be compromised or on their payroll. And all these pro-Ukrainian war hawks who was wearing proudly yellow and blue flags or, and putting their ties and the whatever bags of these colors.
Absolutely. We're out of time, Victor. We're out of time, but I think what you're saying is, on the trajectory we're on is a very good chance that Zelensky's going to end up just like Epstein.
Correct, exactly. And we will never see, because even his bodyguard has to, receive the call to say, kill him. That's it, over. And it's coming very, very soon, because if really elites don't want the global catastrophe, they need to de-escalate and they need to remove these crazy people who very soon will try to control and boss entire the West elites.
The off-ramp is shutting it down, and obviously Zelensky is wanting to stay because his back's against the wall. Yeah, I think that's the best outcome. Not calling for it, but the best outcome is for the West to go ahead and come to their senses and get rid of this guy. Victor Boot, real Victor Boot on X. Thank you so much. Talk to you again soon.
Thank you.
Pretty powerful interview, and none of that's exaggeration, none of that's hype. In fact, we dialed it back. It's worse than we said, just so you know. I'm extreme.